Poštovani gledalci, dobrodošli u Granice Istoka. Ja sam Harun Karčić. U ovom izdanju emisije analiziramo položaj etničkih Ujgura u Kini. Kineska pokrajina Xinjiang, nekada poznata kao istočni Turkestan, stoljećima je bila na čuvenom putu svile između Azije i Europe. Trgovina, umjetnost, nauka i kultura cvjetale su. Slika je danas znatno drugačija. Pokrajina je u vanrednom stanju. Uz sve prisutne sigurnosne mjere i desetke hiljada policajaca, savremene tehnologije omogućavaju policiji da doslovno prati svaki korak lokalnog, pretežno ujgurskog stanovništva. Upravo zbog toga i negoduju. Je li riječ o legitimnim sigurnosnim mjerama ili ugnjetavanju Ujgura? Prije razgovora sa našim gostima, pogledajmo prilog o posljednjim dešavanjima u toj pokrajini.
Ujguri u vjerskom i kulturološkom smislu pripadaju sunitskom pravcu u islamu. Govore ujgurskim jezikom koji potječe iz skupine turkijskih jezika. Dijele i brojne kulturološke sličnosti s narodima Srednje Azije. Pokrajina u kojoj žive uživa status autonomne oblasti, a teritorijalno je najveća u Kini. Tu živi i mnogo hui muslimana, koji pripadaju drugoj etničkoj skupini. Iako su Ujguri autohtoni narodi, većina u toj pokrajini kažu da su nezadovoljni svojim političkim i društvenim statusom. Optužuju kinesku vlast za marginaliziranje i kršenje njihovih osnovnih vjerskih i kulturnih prava u korist Han Kineza. Ujgurski aktivisti unutar i izvan države traže jednakost, zaštitu ljudskih prava i vjerskih sloboda. Među njima je manji broj onih koji zagovaraju uspostavu neovisne ujgurske države. Kineska vlada već godinama provodi politiku koja ide u korist Han nacionalizmu i širenju njihove kulturne hegemonije. U proteklih 20 godina bilo je više međuetničkih sukoba u toj pokrajini, prije svega zbog masovnog naseljavanja Han Kineza. Vlada odbacuje te optužbe i tvrdi da napetost u Xinjiangu izazivaju ujgurski separatisti. Istodobno eksploatira pojavu međuetničkih napetosti kako bi opravdalo upotrebu represivnih sigurnosnih mjera. Od napada na SAD 11. rujna 2001. godine vlada vješto koristi takozvani rat protiv terora kako bi diskreditirala zahtjeve Ujgura za veća vjerska prava i slobode. Takve mjere dobrim dijelom su motivirane i strahom od dezintegracije države, jer Ujguri dijele više vjersko-kulturnih karakteristika sa stanovnicima Srednje Azije nego s ostalim stanovnicima Kine. Mirsada Begović, Al Jazeera.
Ko su Ujguri? Ujguri su muslimanski narod turkijskog porijekla koji naseljavaju područje Centralne Azije. Početkom 20. stoljeća imali su svoju kratkotrajnu nezavisnu državu, poznatu kao istočni Turkestan. Nakon kineske vojne okupacije i aneksiranja istočnog Turkestana 1949. godine, naziv pokrajine je promijenjen u Xinjiang, koja je od tada sastavni dio Kine. Pokrajina čini šestinu ukupne površine Kine i strateški je izlaz prema Centralnoj Aziji. Sa zapada, Xinjiang graniči sa Afganistanom, Tadžikistanom, Kirgistanom i Kazahstanom. Sjeverno je Rusija, a južno Pakistan i Kašmir. U pokrajini Xinjiang živi 20 milijuna stanovnika iz više od 40 etničkih grupa. Prema zvaničnim podacima, u toj pokrajini živi 10 milijuna Ujgura, iako oni tvrde da je ta brojka mnogo veća. Ujguri čine većinu u Xinjiangu i peta su najveća manjinska zajednica u državi. Međutim, kineska vlada od 1950. godina provodi politiku demografskog inženjeringa. To znači da vlada ohrabruje naseljavanje Han Kineza u Xinjiang, dok istovremeno promoviše iseljavanje Ujgura iz pokrajine, kako više ne bi bili većina u tom dijelu Kine. Koliko je uspješna ta politika govori i činjenica da su Ujguri 1949. godine činili 95% stanovništva pokrajine Xinjiang. 60 godina kasnije čine svega 45%. U istom periodu broj Han Kineza se povećao sa 5% na 40%. To je izazvalo rast međuetničkih tenzija. Pokrajina je svjedočila brojnim krvavim sukobima 1990. godina. Posljednji su se dogodili 2009. godine kada je ubijeno 200 osoba. Pokrajina je bitna Kini iz ekonomskih razloga. Tu se nalazi 25% naftnih rezervi Kine, 38% rezervi ugljena i 25% rezervi prirodnog plina. Idemo sada do Washingtona gdje se nalazi Omer Kanat, predstavnik Svjetskog Ujgurskog Kongresa. Mr. Omer, hello and welcome to Al Jazeera. Now, why do you think the Chinese government is carrying out such rigid assimilation policies towards the Uyghur population? Some have even called it a cultural genocide. Just how serious is the current state of affairs in Xinjiang?
Yes, thank you so much. The situation is really serious in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, but of course I would prefer to call it East Turkestan because it's our homeland's historical name. The new party secretary turned East Turkestan in a police state, and the region is already a war zone, look like a war zone, and the party secretary hired tens of thousands of new security personnel, and police and military vehicles are patrolling the streets of every city in East Turkestan, and every city in East Turkestan, and checking the identity of Uyghurs and checking their iPhones, and this is the situation, and the religious repression is tense, and religious, religion banned for the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs cannot practice their religion, enjoy their culture, and use their own language. And even saying Assalamu alaikum is a crime now in East Turkestan for the Uyghurs. And Uyghurs cannot give Muslim name to their children. Giving names like Muhammad, Hadija, Aisha is banned. It considered as a crime. So the reason why the Chinese authorities are trying to seek to completely assimilate the Uyghur people is that they fear that the Uyghur identity is a threat for them to control East Turkestan, the homeland of the Uyghurs. And also it is strategically very important, and a very rich country has rich resources, especially oil and gas, and Chinese authorities in achieving their dream, in achieving the One Belt One Road initiative, consider Uyghurs as a big obstacle. So they want to eliminate the Uyghurs in order to achieve their goal to expand their economic and political influence globally.
Right. Now, Mr. Omer, Uyghurs are not the only Muslims living in the Xinjiang province. There are significant numbers of Hui Muslims and Kazakhs living there as well. Do Chinese government policies discriminate against Uyghurs alone because of their ethnicity, or against all Muslims in the province?
Of course, there are also Kazakhs, Turkic Muslim Kazakh and Kyrgyz, as well as Hui Muslims in East Turkestan. But the primary target of the Chinese government have been Uyghurs. But recently we have been getting information that Chinese authorities started to target Kazakhs and Kyrgyz Muslims as well. But of course, as I said, the Uyghurs remain the main target, the focus of the Chinese government's religious repression. For example, Hui Muslims can observe Ramadan, can attend the mosque, can wear their own traditional clothes. But in the case of Uyghurs, they cannot observe Ramadan, and they cannot wear their traditional clothing. Even they cannot bury their dead according to their own tradition, according to Islam, according to Muslim traditions. Now, because the Chinese government, Chinese authorities will decide when it should be started, and when it should be end, and how many people should be participate in the funeral, even what should be said in the funerals. So therefore, the Chinese government interfere in daily life of Uyghur people, but they don't interfere in daily life of other groups like Hui Muslims. So there is a big difference, because Hui Muslims are speaking Chinese. They speak Chinese, and also ethnically they are Hans.
Yeah. Now, why is China collecting Uyghur DNA data, and what is the correlation between China's household registration system and DNA collection in Xinjiang?
Of course, the DNA collection itself is really a abuse of the right to privacy. The Chinese government, by coercion, intimidation, and threat, collecting DNA samples of the Uyghurs and claiming the right to the very bodies of the Uyghur in order to categorize and monitor them. DNA collection scheme, like other policies, are racially, highly racial. It is because this measure is not implemented elsewhere in China. It targeted only Uyghurs. Uyghurs are in fear. Uyghurs are in very resentment against this policy, but of course they cannot say anything because they don't have any right to say anything, because they will be punished if they don't follow the instruction of the Chinese authorities. But of course we don't know how this data will be stored and used, and how this information will be used by the Chinese state in the future.
Mm-hmm. Now, Uyghurs
and
seem
of
to
course the household registration.
Yeah,
the household registration is intended to limit the movement of Uyghur people inside East Turkestan. So this is this intention of the household registration is to monitor the people and control their movement and limit, restrict the movement of the Uyghur people inside their own country.
Right. Now, Mr. Omer, Uyghurs seem to have been left alone to fend for themselves without much support from Muslim-majority countries. How does that make you feel as an Uyghur yourself?
Yeah, it's very demoralizing, and Muslim countries, Muslim states knows very well what's happening in China on Uyghur Muslims, how the Chinese government repressed Uyghur Muslims and to try to destroy the Islamic culture in East Turkestan and destroy the culture, Uyghur language, Uyghur tradition. They are aware what's happening, but they prefer to be silent. It is very unfortunate, and actually the Uyghur situation should be part of any dialogue between the Muslim leaders and Chinese government officials. But until now, the Muslim countries prefer to stay silent. But of course, there are many individuals and NGOs which supports the Uyghurs in promoting their cause. And of course, the large public Muslim populations are unaware of the situation. The lack of knowledge caused them to stay silent, because the governments, Muslim governments, are trying to hide the information from their public because of any protest in large protests, in public protests in the Muslim countries. So the Muslim countries now prefer a very short-term interest to speak out against what's happening on Uyghur people in East Turkestan.
Mr. Omer Kanat, thank you so much for being on Al Jazeera Balkans. Represivne mjere kineske vlade rezultirale su etničkim sukobima Ujgura i Han Kineza početkom 90. godina, u kojima je poginulo više stotina ljudi. Sigurnosne mjere pojačane su dodatno proteklih godina zbog niza militantnih napada na kinesku policiju, za koje vlada krivi ujgurske separatiste. Detaljnije o tome kako ovakve drakonske mjere utječu na prosječne Ujgure pojašnjava nam Sophia Richardson iz organizacije Human Rights Watch. Sophie, once again, hello and welcome to Al Jazeera. Now, what do you make of the Chinese government's massive securitization policies in the Xinjiang province?
Well, we know that the Chinese government has long treated Uyghurs with suspicion and hostility, partly as a result of their very distinct religious, cultural, and linguistic practices, but also because the central government has long viewed them as not being loyal to the People's Republic of China. We also know that police have long enjoyed extraordinary powers across all of the country, but particularly in Xinjiang. And what worries us especially about this technology is that it allows the authorities to surveil people to a much greater extent, sometimes without their even knowing about it, and potentially to essentially profile ethnic and religious minorities. And all of these are obviously serious violations of human rights law.
Right. Are such tactics employed against Uyghurs alone or against Hui Muslims and Kazakhs as well?
The Uyghurs seem to be the primary targets for some of these projects, but other forms of surveillance, for example, the collection of DNA samples, seems to be applied province-wide, regardless of ethnicity. We documented a public health program last year under which everyone in the region between the age of 12 and 65 was compelled to provide a DNA sample regardless of their ethnicity. And presumably that means that some Han residents of Xinjiang were also compelled to give DNA samples.
Right. Why does the Chinese government view the Uyghur population in Xinjiang as being disloyal?
You know, I think it's a fine question. You know, the central authorities are certainly very dogmatic in insisting on Chinese Communist Party power, and anybody who questions that, whether it's an ethnic minority, a religious minority, even a Han who lives in Beijing who has different political views, tends to come in for particularly harsh criticism. I think that the government has reserved particular hostility for the Uyghur community because it is ethnically and linguistically and religiously distinct from the rest of most of the rest of the population of the People's Republic. And arguably most problematic, the central government really has used the U.S.'s war on terror as an excuse to paint Uyghurs as terrorists, separatists, as threats to Chinese national unity, and to treat them accordingly. And I think that's done enormous damage in the region, actually deepening hostilities from Xinjiang that weren't necessarily there 20 or 30 years ago towards the central government. It's a very tense environment now.
Now, all this is done under the pretext of fighting terrorism and militancy. Just how founded are Chinese government claims of separatism and militancy among the Uyghur community?
Well, the evidence connecting any incidents of violence in Xinjiang to international terrorist organizations is extremely thin. That said, there have been violent attacks on, for example, the police on occasion, and we've condemned that. That's obviously a violation of human rights law as well. But you know, our primary recommendation to the central government, which really holds all of the power, is that they need urgently to revise and revisit and consult with Uyghurs about some of these incredibly intrusive, offensive policies and practices that produce that kind of resentment towards the central government. If you're going to tell people what they can and can't name their children, how they can and can't pray, how they can and can't have religious ceremonies, you're bound to, I think, drive people to a certain sense of frustration.
Now, is there a risk that such heavy-handed tactics will further exacerbate already existing tensions between Han Chinese and the Uyghurs?
You know, well, let me say it this way, that I think the situation in Xinjiang now is considerably more tense than it was 10 years ago or 10 years before that. And I think that's largely a function of, you know, an extraordinary police and security force presence across the region, restrictions on access to passports, really, and the reintroduction of tactics like, you know, political education centers, which we've documented people are being forced to spend weeks at a time, you know, demonstrating their loyalty to the party. I mean, these are gross violations of human rights law. But even if you want to take it out of a legal context and think about it in a more political one, it's hard to see why that kind of treatment would make people any more loyal to a government rather than less. Right. So we really think that the Chinese government has a lot to answer for in deepening the tensions in the region rather than lessening.
Right. Would you go as far as to call this cultural genocide?
Well, as a legal matter, I'm not sure that term really helps very much. That said, people have a right to culture and all sorts of forms of culture, whether that's language, for example, or certain kinds of community practices. And almost all of those really have been subject to very intrusive policies and practices by Chinese authorities that, again, does nothing, I think, but deepen the hostility towards those authorities, whether they're national or local.
Mm-hmm. What do you make of the absolute silence coming from Muslim-majority countries?
I think it's a real concern. I mean, this is a global community that I think can and should speak up on behalf of a community that shares that religion. Even if the rest of the Muslim community was only speaking up about the restrictions on Islam that the Chinese government has imposed in Xinjiang, I think that would go a long way towards, among other things, reassuring people in Xinjiang that a larger faith community is concerned about what's happening to them.
Right. Sophia Richardson, thank you so much for speaking to us. It was a pleasure having you on Al Jazeera.
Great to talk to you.
Poštovani gledalci, bila je to Sophia Richardson iz organizacije Human Rights Watch. Zbog represivnih mjera kineske vlade došlo je do radikalizacije određenog broja Ujgura u pokrajini Xinjiang. To vlada koristi kao argument da dodatno pojača policijske mjere. A zbog nedostatka podrške islamskih i zapadnih država, kao i zbog neadekvatne kritike prema kineskoj vladi, Ujguri se osjećaju sve više zaboravljenima i izolovanima, a njihova budućnost ostaje neizvjesna. Bilo je to sve u ovom izdanju Granica Istoka. Cijelu emisiju možete gledati na našem web portalu balkans.aljazeera.net. Hvala na pažnji.